The third type of innovation we call disruption, and they create growth. So let me describe, and this is going to be a complicated slide before we're done, so I apologize in advance. But you'll see these three concentric circles, and what they're made to represent is actually you can describe the history of any company in terms of these three circles. The innermost circle represents the customers who have the most money and the best access to a product or service. And then as you go to the larger circles, they represent larger populations of people who have progressively less money. Almost always, industries begin in the center because the first products and services are so costly and complicated that only people who have a lot of that are able to buy it and use it. So, given that, I want to then describe what disruption is and why it creates growth. So I'll put on the vertical axis the performance of product or services over time. In every market, there are two trajectories. The first one is, in every market, there's a trajectory of improvement that innovating companies provide as they keep introducing in every market, there is a trajectory of improvement that customers are able to utilize in their lives. And we don't think about this very much, but our lives don't change a lot. And that's why this is so flat. Then in every market, there's a different trajectory of improvement that innovating companies provide as they keep introducing better and better products. The most important finding about this is this trajectory of technological progress almost always outstrips the ability of customers to use the product. And what it means is that a technology at the beginning that isn't very good actually is prone to overshoot what those same customers are able to utilize at a later point in time. And there's not much gray hair in the room. But if you talk to somebody who was in their teens or 20s in the 1980s, we were at that time trying to figure out how to use word, how we were learning how to type on those early personal computers. About every 30 seconds, you had to stop and let the Intel 286 chip catch up to you. Because the world's fastest microprocessor could not even keep pace with our fingers on the left-hand side. But if you take your computer apart now and just look at the microprocessor there, we utilize only about 15% of the capability of that processor. Intel has just way overshot what most customers in mainstream applications are able to use. Now, some of the innovations that help good products better are incremental innovations. Others are dramatic breakthrough innovations. But we use a word for them that we call sustaining innovations, which was on the last slide, because they're really important. Almost always, incumbent companies who are the leaders on the left-hand side of the diagram find themselves still on top of the industry when these battles of sustaining innovations are over. And if you want to start a new business and you want it to be successful, and you think you can beat the incumbents by making better products that you could sell for better profits to the customer's best competitors, they will kill you. And the evidence is really very strong. It doesn't matter how big or powerful you are. If you think that you can beat the incumbents in their market, they will kill you. We could spend a lot of time on that. But there's another type of innovation that we call disruptive innovations. And disruptive innovations transform products which in the middle were too complicated and expensive. Now disruption makes it so much more affordable and accessible that many more people are able to use those products or services. And almost always, entrant companies typically win at disruption. And that's exactly what Google did, right? Because advertisement and finding customers and making things known, you had to have a lot of money to play in that game. And then your technologies and services made it so that anybody could find what they needed, whether you're a buyer or a seller. And you changed the world by making it affordable and accessible. And none of the incumbents who you guys beat are around today because entrants typically win. And let me describe why. So, living in Boston as we have for the last 3 decades, there was in the 1970s and 80s a company there called Digital Equipment Corporation. And at that time, digital was widely viewed as Google is now. It was the most widely admired company in all the world. And when you read explanations about why they were so successful, always success was attributed to the brilliance of their management team. And then about 1988, digital equipment just fell off the cliff and began to unravel very quickly. When you then read explanations about why they had stumbled so badly, always it was attributed to the ineptitude of the management team. And the very same people were running the company. And for a while, I framed the problem as, gosh, I wonder how smart people could get so stupid so fast. And that's really the explanation that most people journ up when a company stumbles, that somehow a company that the management team that had its act together at one point were out of their league at another time. But the real reason why the stupid manager hypothesis just didn't feel right is that every company that made the same class of computers, we called them mini computers, they were about the size of this pulpit. Every company that made that were killed in unison. It wasn't just digital equipment, but it was Data General, Prime, Wang, Nixdorf, Hewlett-Packard, Honeywell. And you'd expect these people to collude on pricing occasionally, but to collude to collapse was a stretch. And trying to understand why they do that was the puzzle that we had. So as we understood it a little bit better, we realized that, this mini computer was quite a complicated product. It had to be sold direct to the customer. And the selling process involved a lot of training and support and service and software. And you had to have a cost like that in the business to play in the game. And that meant that digital equipment had to generate gross margins of 45% on computers that sold for $250,000. And that's how they made their money. Now, in their company, as in every company, there were people coming in through the 1980s all the time with ideas for new products that they could develop. Some of these entailed making better products than they had ever made before. In fact, these mini computers would be so good that they could reach up into the tiers of the market where people historically had to buy mainframe computers. You looked at those business models, they could generate gross margins of 60%, and you could sell the products for twice as much money. So while the management was trying to decide if that's what they should do, there were other people coming in saying, ladies and gentlemen, you don't get it. Just look out the window. Everybody is buying personal computers, which was the case in the 1970s and 80s. But when management would look out, in fact, they could see that everybody was buying mainframe computer. They could see that everybody was making personal computers. But there are a couple of other things that bothered them a lot. The first one, do you remember how crummy those early personal computers were? Apple sold the Apple II as a toy to children. not a single one of Digital's customers could even use a personal computer for the first 10 years that they were in the management. And then they got no signal from their customers that the personal computer mattered, because in fact it didn't to them. And then when you looked at the business details, it looked a lot worse, because these small computers only generated gross margins of 40%, and they were headed to 20% quickly, and you could only earn those paltry percentages on computers that sold for $2,000. And so the question that the management had to address was, gosh, guys, let's sit down here. I wonder if we should make better products that we could sell for better profits to our best customers. Alternatively, maybe we should make worse products that none of our customers would buy, that would ruin our margins. What should we do? And it is a very, very hard problem, and we call it the innovator's dilemma. Because doing the right thing is the wrong thing, and doing the wrong thing is the right thing. Can you think about where else you've seen this happen, where somebody comes in with a simple product, going after customers who historically couldn't have access to it, and then it just grew up and killed the leaders? BlackBerry. Yeah, they just knocked off sitting down with a laptop, and then Apple disrupted BlackBerry. And now Samsung and Huawei are in the process of disrupting Apple. It's a good one. Where else have you seen it?
Disk drives.
Disk drives. The big ones get disrupted by the little ones, and then the flash disrupted disk drives. And almost all of them are out of business now. That's a good example. You guys look like you make a lot of money. And I saw Lexuses outside left and right in the parking lot. But that's not how Toyota entered America with Lexuses. Toyota came in with a rusty little subcompact in the 1960s called the Corona. And it was so much more affordable and accessible that the rebar of humanity, people we call college students, could own a car. And so they came out here by making it affordable. And in the back plane, General Motors and Ford were making big cars for big people. And people would see Toyota coming in, and Toyota went from a Corona to a Tercel, Corolla, Camry, Avalon, 4Runner, Sequoia, and then the Lexus. And as Toyota were coming up there, going after new customers, they'd say, we ought to go get those buggers. And so they'd design a Pinto or a Chevette and try to sell subcompacts into the marketplace. But then their finance people would look at the money that they could make in subcompacts with the profitability that they could make making bigger SUVs and bigger pickup trucks to even bigger people. It absolutely made no sense to defend the low end of the business when they had the opportunity to make good products better. Who's killing Toyota? They don't feel like they're getting killed, incidentally. Yeah, the Koreans are just killing them at the low end. And Toyota's doing the right thing, because why would they ever try to defend the low end of their business when they have the privilege of competing against Mercedes at the high end? And then the Chinese manufacturers are coming next. And we seriously don't need to worry about them.